Okay, welcome back, everybody. What we're going to take a look at now is how to set a limit and really cut off your functions very simply from point to point. So I kept this absolute value equation. This was one I was working with in the last video. First thing you have to do is turn on your grid. That's very important because we're going to actually designate where this absolute value equation is going to be limited to. The second thing that you have to do is select the point tool. And we know that equations, functions, graphs, they go on forever and ever and ever. So what we're going to do here is we're going to tell GeoGebra to actually cut and only take a snapshot of a certain limit. And that limit is going to be an X value. It's going to be a horizontal limit. So it's very important for us to actually take these points that I'm going to place and figure out where we want to limit our function. So let's say in this case, I placed my absolute values in the right spot that I wanted for my picture. And I want to limit it here. I wanted it to start right here at this point right here, which is 1, 6. So I place my coordinate point A at 1, 6. Now let's say I wanted to take that across and I wanted to make it symmetrical. Then I would have to take it across to the coordinate 7, 6, which if we remember which is almost identical to what we see with parabolas, absolute value equations also symmetrical. Now, I place my points, and that's very important because what I'm going to do now is I need to figure out what X values of these coordinates I have. Some of you have them so large that you have to place those points and know exactly what those X values are. Some of them are nice and easy, like here I have an X value of 1 and an X value of 7. That's pretty simple for me to determine. But make sure you place your points first. Now what I'm going to do, the function that I typed in, this first function, and obviously it highlights when I hover over it. We are going to limit this function. So we have to double click in here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take everything out except the actual equation that I had, even the equal sign. And the command I'm going to tell GeoGebra right now is I'm going to tell GeoGebra that this equation right now is a function. Okay, so that f of x that we saw recently, that is still there by me telling it it is going to be a function right now. And then I hit an open brace. Okay, so now what I can do, if you notice that open brace, this is a whole command. This was my equation. What I can do is I can just highlight the whole thing, holding shift and hit right or left, and I can cut it, control X. And then inside this function, I can just hit V, control V, and paste it. And it makes sure that there are no spaces in between anything in here. So what I'm telling the computer right now is that GeoGebra, I'm telling it that I want to take this is my whole function. If I just hit enter here, it would do nothing. It would just say, hey, that's a whole function. But I said I wanted to limit it from 1, 6 to 7, 6. And the most important values that we're going to limit it to, we're going to limit it on our x-axis. So the only values I'm really looking at are 1 and 7. So how do I tell and command GeoGebra to actually take a picture that's only from here to here? Well, I hit after and I read it left to right, like we read any type of graph. I read left to right. So the first coordinate I have is 1, 6. The X value there is 1. So what I'm going to type into my function up here is a comma, a space, and then I'm going to type in the first X value I saw, which was 1. Now I repeat the process to figure out what X value I want it to end at. So this is the start. So your limit starts at 1. We only want to take a picture of this whole function from 1 to what was the X value here, 7. So I do the same process again, comma, space, 7. And I make sure there's no space on the end here. Once I have my two limits in there, it's saying it's going from 1 to 7. And notice what will pop up after I hit enter here. Two things will happen. Number 1, take a look at the graph. What happens to the graph? 2, take a look at the function then. I hit enter. And now I have my actual function. Now, this right here, this popped up, obviously, some type of mistake in the background here. However, the picture that I wanted to have was of that function in which we have right here. We are taking a picture of it from 1 to 7, and we're getting rid of everything else. And obviously in here it gives you compound inequality, so on and so forth. So I'm going to delete everything. Let me show you again. I'm going to type in a new function. Let's say I had a parabola. say I had the parabola x squared minus 2x minus 8. It would obviously help if I type that in right. Hit it in, there's my parabola. First thing I want to do, I want to figure out where my limits are going to go. So I'm going to drop this down just a little bit, just so I can see. Let's say I wanted them to go from my first x-intercept, which was -2, 0. And then let's say I wanted it to go, I'll pick a random point. This y value up here is 2, and the x value, drop that down just a bit. I want it to be where y is 2. I can double click and change this point if I want. So right now, this is the coordinate that I want. So my x values are -2, my y value, or my other x value is 4.32. So I go back in here, double click, I delete everything in front. And if I wanted to, I could just retype this whole thing with function. So that's actually what I'm going to do. Type in function, open brace, and I'll start with that x squared minus 2x minus 8, comma, space. First x value is -2, so I type in -2, comma, another space. My second x value, again, this was a 4.32, so I have to type it in as 4.32. And then I hit enter. And that, as you see, now my graph, I don't see anything else in this function. All I see are the x values and all the y values from when it is -2, when x is -2, all the way up to 4.32, which is what I told GeoGebra to cut my picture. Okay, so very useful if you have any, when you're doing your picture, any function you have, so the parabolas, the absolute values, the lines in slope-intercept form, you can cut them and change them to how you want it to look based on your limits here. So what you're going to do now, you're going to now try to emulate that process, take it over, and you're going to work with your group members to create your picture. Please ask for help when you need it. We can work on the coding and the limits when you need help on that.